Let's talk about all of the books that I have read in the month of December and January. A bunch of fiction recommendations including thrillers, fantasies, romances, some popular releases, some underrated books, and a lot more. Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing very nice. I'm sending a lot of hugs and positivity to all of you. Hi, if you're new, welcome to the channel. I really hope you enjoy the content, and if you do, consider subscribing. Welcome to the club. I am also going to be talking about books that I have read in December because I did not get to fully talk about them and obsess over them in a long video, which is why here I am combining both December and January. Starting with the non-fiction though, because this one I have been reading for around a month now, even though it is a very short book, and it was actually so much fun to read. But it actually felt like I have somebody who has come to me, a mentor who has come to me to give me a lot of life lessons that will help me in the workplace, and I did not want to take my time for granted. I wanted to give it as much time as possible, and I took around a month to finish reading this book. If you are new to the corporate world, or it's been like 2 to 3 years and you're in there and you're grinding but you don't seem to get anywhere, and you're just like, oh my god, what is going on? And you know, we all wish, we don't because I'm not in the corporate world, but I have seen my brother and my friends who wish that there was somebody in their office with a lot of experience who could just talk to them. Okay, they could just share their real experience, where they are not only talking about all of the good things that you're supposed to do and holding them up to high standards. They're being real, they're being authentic, and then they're giving lessons about who you should be, what you can do in your workspace. Somebody who can tell them that it's okay to be selfish over here because it's not going to be hurting the people around you. Somebody who can tell them how to manage work and life all together, because the mentors in your office may be holding you up to a standard that is very high to achieve, because they want you to shoot for bigger goals, because they want you to work a lot, they want the productivity, they want their company to grow, and so they are not realistic with you. That is when this book comes into play, and I am totally obsessed with this title itself. I basically was attracted to the book because of the title, but then I stayed for the content. It's like, came for the title, stayed for the content. And the book is Selflessly Selfish by Ramanathan Subramaniam. This book has 250 pages, and it is the compilation of all of the good, the bad, the ugly that the author himself has experienced over a span of decades, all brought together for you in a humorous, cozy, funny way. Somebody who is being completely realistic with you, somebody who is inspiring you to lead, somebody who is giving you lessons but is also cracking some jokes here and there, so you're like, oh okay, fine. And even though I am not in the corporate world, I got so many lessons that I can use in the business side of things when it comes to my own work. It just does a lot in a very short amount of time. So I highly recommend you read this book if you're starting a new job this year, or you have just started but you want to set up new goals for yourself for this new year, because it will definitely help you a lot. This book will be the friend and mentor you need to excel in your workplace and in life and become selflessly selfish. I read one non-fiction book every month, but this one went on for a long time, so this is a non-fiction book that I read for December and for January. And now let's move on to the fiction titles. First up, we have The Women by Kristin Hannah, which is the story of the women during the Vietnam War. We follow the story of Frankie, whose brother has gone to war, and she is seeing that her parents are so proud of him, and Frankie also wants to do something that makes her brother proud. In a time where it is not very common for women to go to war and help, she has taken this impulsive decision that she's just going to go and she's going to do this, and she's going to stay with her brother. Except when she tells this decision to her parents, also when she goes to war, things don't turn out to be the way she thought they would be. In reality, things are just way more gruesome than she thought it would be, and she is slapped in the face by the reality of things. But we follow her journey in the war itself, and then what happens once she comes back from the war. And it already started with a bang. I was already very connected to the characters within the 30 to 40 pages, and then it started losing my attention a little bit. But then as we moved forward, it just kept becoming intense, and I got so attached to Frankie that whenever something was happening with her, I could feel a pang in my chest. Also, because so many of the historical fiction books that Kristin Hannah writes is inspired by true events, and so is this book as written in the author's note. Knowing that in my heart that there probably probably was a person like Frankie who has gone through all of these things, and this down spirals and whatnot was just very emotionally painful for me, but at the same time so inspiring. There were so many parts in the book where I was so physically angry with the characters and everything that they were doing and saying to Frankie. You could see Frankie doing things that she shouldn't be doing. It was like a car wreck that you can't look away from because you have to see what is going to happen. Four Winds is one of my favorite books by Kristen Hanna, but one of the things that I was complaining about at that time was that it's a very slow book. That has been fixed in this book. The pacing was so beautiful. It's not extremely fast paced, but it's also not very slow. Very easy to read even if you are a beginner. You can read it even if you are a teenager, though do read the trigger warnings. This is a 6-star read for me. Next up we have House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is the story of a man who we see his life in his workplace, and he's trying to do everything right. He does not want to step on any toes. He does not want to cross any lines, and his job is to make sure that the children in orphanages are all taken care of. But he also has a dream, a little frame on his table that reminds him of what his dream is, to live by the sea and be free. He actually comes across a project that takes him to the sea, where he has to make sure that these bunch of children living over there in an orphanage are all good. Except they are not just human children, they are creatures, different types of creatures, including the son of the devil in there, a gnome in there, and we have the caretaker of that orphanage. And we see our main character Linus's journey, adjusting with all of these kids, adjusting with the caretaker, and making some tough decisions. We see his character arc, and it is literally one of the most beautiful books ever. If there was one book that I would want the world to read, it would be this book, because this is the kind of world that I would want to live in. Not because of the creatures, and not because it is so fantastical, and not because he's living by the sea and for the scene, but because of the character arc that Linus has. If a character like Linus, who does not dare to dream, if a character like Linus who does not want to cross lines, he has these rigid things in his mind, can change over time, I think anybody can, and that is exactly what I would want all of us to go through. We do not open ourselves to the fact that it is changeable. Things can change. Your beliefs can change with time because of what you are experiencing, and how inclusive we can be with each other. And that message was sent so beautifully through this book in a very cozy fantasy way. And these are the books that make me feel like fantasy books come so close to the real world, and even if it is such a cozy story going on, there's so much to learn from it. This book yet again was a 6-star read for me. I read it when I was in Mumbai, and it made my entire trip so memorable. Very easy to read, especially if you're a beginner. I will highly recommend you read this book if you want to start with cozy fantasy, and it is also great for teenagers. After that, I actually got my Kindle, so I read a lot of books on Kindle Unlimited. First up, we have Never Lie by Frida McFadden, which is the story of this couple who is going for a house viewing, except that once they reach the house, they are stuck over there because of the snowstorm. But as time passes, you can see a lot of secrets being revealed, and there are multiple timelines, there are multiple POVs. Frida McFadden, as usual, confuses you. It's a very binge-worthy book. It was slower than the other books that I have read by her, but not too slow in a way where the story is developed well. Each chapter was ending up in a hook, which I love so much because it keeps me wanting to read more and more. And the plot twist in the end was so worth it. So there was a lot about this book that I actually enjoyed a lot, also because it is about a couple, and you guys know I love thrillers that involve couples. It gave me strong rock paper scissors vibe by Alice Feeney, and it is nowhere near rock paper scissors when it comes to the rating or the standing that it has in my life and in my own mind. But if you enjoyed rock paper scissors, I think this can be a good book by Frida McFadden that you will enjoy. I mean, there are so many books that she has written. This is one of those books that's actually good, like The Housemaid. I think I gave this book 3.75 stars, but I can bump it to 4 stars. Next up, I read a Christmas holiday romance because it was cozy, it was Christmas time. The book is My December Darling by Lauren Asher, which is a novella by her that was and probably is available on Kindle Unlimited. There's not much to tell you about the story itself. It's the story of these two people who live in Lake Wisteria. It's in that world, and we see how they interact with each other and the romance between them. It is one of the most cliche books that I have ever read in my entire life, but I do not say that in a negative context. I actually enjoyed it so much because that is exactly what I wanted. I had read a lot of heavy books like The Women and House on the Cerulean Sea. I had read a thriller that was really fast paced. I needed a break and I got it with this book. Lauren Asher's Men, the book Boyfriends, top notch. Okay, I love the guy who's there in this book, so understanding, no space for miscommunication. Even though the main female character was sort of edging towards miscommunication, the guy just wouldn't let it happen, and that was my favorite thing ever. And I have still marked a couple of quotes here and there because even if the story was cliche, it was just written in such a romantic manner that some of the quotes really hit, and it was developed so well that it was just really, I was just able to really connect with the characters and the romance side of things. So I had a really good time with it. I think I gave this 4 stars or 5 stars, I don't remember, but now that time has passed, I think I will reduce it to 3.5 stars. Next up we have Black Ties and White Lies. This is probably categorized as an erotica, which I did not know before I got into the book. I read it because I read a quote on Instagram, so just because of one quote I was like, it's available on Kindle Unlimited, I don't have to spend money, I am just going to read it. The guy in the book is the boss, the woman is his secretary or assistant, one of those things, and now they have to fake love with each other so that the guy gets something that he wants in his life. I don't exactly remember because I just deleted it from my mind. I read that quote and I thought that it's enemies to lovers, they're gonna hate each other and then they're gonna love each other, and I was so excited about it because that is the sort of quote that I read, and I still love that quote even now. But the guy in this book was just plain rude. So rude from the beginning itself, and the main female character was insufferable. There are dual point of views in this book and I just couldn't in either of their POVs. Okay, I mean, I sometimes, even though I don't like the main female character, I really enjoy how the main male character like pines over her in his POV, even if he's being rude to her face to face, and that is what I want to read. But this guy, even in his own POV, was plain rude, and then it just escalated to like physical stuff, and then it just, I don't know what was going on, and I did not even enjoy the pacing. But I did wish that I would DNF this book. It was that annoying for me, so I gave it 2 stars. Next up, I read Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon, which is a YA novel by her. This is the story of 2 rivals in high school, and it is their last day, and they're competing against each other for this final competition that they are doing for all of the graduates. I am absolutely obsessed with this book. The only negative point, actually, let me talk about the positives first. First up, rivals to lovers, best trope in the world. I so want many more books with rivals to lovers. It's just top tier. I think that enemies to lovers is done way better in fantasy novels, but when it comes to real world romance, I think I enjoy rivals to lovers more than enemies to lovers now because the heat, the tension is so good. Secondly, he falls first. There is no dual POV, so you don't really get to see the POV of the guy. But as the story progresses, you can just very clearly see that he likes her. She is competing against him. He just loves her the way that she is, and she's inspiring him and whatnot. And all of that to read about is just top tier romance for me with the innocence of a YA novel. So I really enjoyed that. Thirdly, this book talks about so many topics like racism and how your economical background plays into your life, especially when you are young and you are in school. So even if it is a YA romance book, it conveys a lot of messages which I really appreciated. I love it when romance novels are not only about the romance but also about these other topics, and that was going on in this book. So I really enjoyed that. These are all of the positives. I was obsessed with this book. I was giggling. There are so many highlights from this book. I love this book. Okay, the only negative point is that this is a YA novel, and as much as I don't mind the mentions of spice and smut or not, this book went really into detail with it towards the end of the book for pages, and that is something that I would not expect from a YA novel, and I am just not okay with it. It's just my reading preference. I am not okay with so much of it being there in a YA novel because the innocence, the non-physical factor is what I enjoy the most about it. So it's just a personal preference, and it is rated that you can read it if you were 13 plus. I think, but I just want to put this disclaimer that it does have a very elongated spice scene towards the end of the book. Apart from that, obsessed with this book, so I've given this 4.5 stars. Next up, we have No Exit by Taylor Adams, which is the story of this woman who is stuck at a rest stop because of another snowstorm. I love this trope in thrillers where people are stuck in a place because of a snowstorm. I don't know why. Like, I've read like 4 books surrounding this trope, so I think that I really love it. Except that when she goes outside to try to get a signal in her phone, she sees there is a child stuck in that van. One of the people who is with her at the rest stop is actually a kidnapper, and now we see her journey with it because she's stuck over there. What is she going to do? Taylor Adams is the author of The Last Word, and you guys know I am absolutely obsessed with that book. I was equally obsessed with this book. The pacing, the characters, so good. You also see the POV of the kidnapper, so good. Short to read, page turner, all of the good adjectives that go with thrillers. I was actually obsessed with this book. I just really wish that it was a little more cutthroat. It was gruesome and slasher, but it was not as slasher as I wanted it to be. And I got a little bit bored in the middle there, which is why I have not given this book 5 stars, but I have given it 4.5 stars. What an amazing experience. And I actually thought that Taylor Adams has only written these 2 books, but then I saw a couple of more titles towards the end of this book when I was reading it on my Kindle. So I'm going to do more research, see if it's available on Kindle or whatever, and I'm going to read those 2 because I'm absolutely obsessed with Taylor Adams. Next up, I read The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden, which is also available on Kindle Unlimited. Guys, books for free that you can read in any position. I was absolutely obsessed. I was just back to back just reading books. The Boyfriend is the story of the boyfriend. That is all I'm going to tell you, because if I tell you more than that, it's just a spoiler. So there is a girl and we're seeing her POV, and she gets a boyfriend, and we see what exactly happens with the boyfriend. Now again, multiple POVs and multiple timelines, like every book of Frida McFadden, but it is the slowest book that I have read by Frida McFadden. It is still binge worthy. I actually finished it in 1 or 2 sittings, but it was really slow compared to all of her other books that I have read. Also, for the longest time, I actually thought that this is the most cliche book ever when it comes to a thriller. The similar experience that I had with The Teacher, and I was actually about to DNF. Ankita, who's a friend on Instagram, was actually also reading this book, and she said that you should finish it. You will probably really enjoy the twist in the end. So that is why I trusted her and I continued with the book, and I'm so happy I did, because it was actually a very good twist in the end. Everything clicked, everything made sense, so it was very satisfying. I still do think that the first half of the book was just insanely slow for me, so I've given this book 3.5 stars. Next up, we have Ugly Beautiful by Alice Feeney. I am not going to go deep into this book's review because a vlog is coming up where I have talked about this book a lot, and I encourage you to look out for that. But this is the latest release by Alice Feeney. I actually read this in December itself, but I couldn't talk about it because the book was not released and it was not allowed for me to talk about it. However, it is now released, I think, already. Yeah, I think it released on 25th January in India, so I can talk about it now. And I just want to say, absolutely obsessed. This is probably the most masterfully written book by Alice Feeney. I will not say that this book is a thriller because it was not thrilling at all. This book felt more like a horror mystery book to me, and the vibes were vibing when it comes to the horror mystery vibes of it. Also, I read it at night when I was alone at home at that time, and it was winter time also, so it was chilly and it was quiet in my house. I think I was just reading it at the perfect time, and so the book just hit very hard for me. And the storyline, everything, the plot twist, everything about this book is just so masterfully done that even if I can understand why people won't enjoy this book as much as they enjoyed Rock Paper Scissors, because it is not that fast paced, it is not that hooky, I personally am obsessed with it, and I think it's the best book written by her because of how it is crafted. I just really appreciate the writing, and that is a rare occurrence when it comes to a thriller mystery book. So I really enjoyed this book, and it's a 6-star read for me. Next up, we have The Wedding People by by Alison Espach, which I read the ebook version of this. This is the story of a woman who has checked herself into a hotel with the sole purpose of dying, except that she's bombarded by $1 million wedding. She comes across the bride, she tells the bride what her plans are, and the bride is like, whoa, hold up, my wedding means the world to me. I have spent so much money on it. You have to postpone these dying plans for yourself. Obviously Phoebe does not listen to this, but some things happen because of which she is deviated from her plans, and we see what exactly happens with it. There is also so much drama with the wedding going on. There are so many characters in this book that kept the book very fun, very engaging. But at the core of it, this book is super intense and complex, because we also do a back and forth of Phoebe's life, what led her to the decision that she has taken, and now how she is coping with it during a wedding, how she becomes a part of the wedding, and how she's rediscovering life like she has just been born. And that entire journey, to read about it, is just beautiful. There are so many quotes in this book that I'm obsessed with when it comes to just being a human being. The complexities of just existing, just being a human being, just that's it, has been talked about in the most beautiful way ever. Not only sunshine and roses, not only the dark parts of it. You see life through the eyes of a woman who has seen the ugly and is now ready to rediscover the beautiful and accept the ugly, and that is top-notch content for me. So please do read the trigger warnings before you get into this book, though I don't think it has released in India yet. But if you can get the EPUB or PDF version of it, and I would not recommend this book to teenagers simply because it's a little too complex to understand when you are a teenager. I just realized I missed a few books that I read in December. Okay, backtracking a little bit, I'm sorry, the books are all a mix of December and January, but I also did read Shatter Me, which is the first book in the entire series. The series is 9 books long, and this is the story of Juliet, who is a prisoner. She has been in prison since a long time, since a lot of days, like 278 days, and she is just yanked out of it for no reason, and we see what exactly happens with it. It's a dystopian world where the world basically does not exist. There is no food, the weather is bad, it's always cold, the pollution, whatnot, and we have a villain who has his own agenda. His name is Aaron Warner. Okay, that is all I'm going to tell you about the book, because I am going to read it in a vlog, and I also know that a lot of you guys already know about Shatter Me. It's one of the most popular series on earth when it comes to book talk books, so I'm very excited to explore it. I read the first books to decide whether I want to commit myself to the next 8 books in this series or not, and I am happy to say that yes, I am very much willing to do so. It actually was very choppy for me in the beginning. I really did enjoy a lot of quotes in there, and I have underlined it a lot. However, Aaron Warner entered the book, and I was just like, oh my god, who is this guy? Oh, he's the villain, whatever. And now, like, the book ended, and I actually can't stop thinking about Aaron Warner. And Aaron Warner is the villain. Is this going to be the villain gets the girl trope? And I know that you guys must be thinking that how do I not know about this, because it's so popular. Yes, it is, but I have somehow avoided all spoilers, all sort of content, and I don't even know what the book is about at all. I really don't know how Aaron is going to be redeemed. I don't get it, because he is like horrible in the first book. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I have been so obsessively thinking about Aaron Warner that I have decided to continue the series, and I'm actually gonna read it very soon. However, the book in itself was very mid for me, and so I have only given it 3.5 stars. Next up, I read Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas, which is also the first book. It's not actually the first book, but I read it as the first book in the Throne of Glass series for the same reason, to see whether I want to continue with the series or not, and the answer is yes. This book was a 6-star read for me. It was brutal. It was so good. Just got remembered of how good it was. Okay, I read a lot of it as I was going to Junagadh, and then a lot of it once I came back, and in the beginning itself it gave me strong Six of Crows vibes. And you guys know Six of Crows duology is my favorite thing in the world. The pacing, the tension, the main female character and all of the other characters too. Oh my god, Assassin's Blade is a compilation of a lot of novellas. I just cannot imagine what the entire series is going to be like. I am so ready for it. It's just that I want to read this entire series as physical books. I just really need some god fairy, I don't know, somebody to just come and be like, oh, here, I'm gonna gift you the entire Throne of Glass series so you can read it. So I can read it. But apart from that, I am trying to save up and get the series as soon as possible. But yeah, oh my god, absolutely obsessed with it. Next up, I read a new release this year, which is Too Good to Be True by Prajakta Kohli. Prajakta Kohli is a popular YouTuber, content creator, actor, now an author, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows her. I was so excited about this book. I actually thought it'll come out in 2024, which is why it was on my list, on my anticipated new releases, but it came out in January of 2025. As soon as it was out, I got it and I read it in one sitting at night itself. I did enjoy the book. It was a fun read. However, it was very, I don't want to say cliche, because it's the inevitability of what is going to happen that keeps me hooked to the books a lot of times when it comes to romance. However, I just think that the book could have stood out if Prajakta Kohli had written it like herself, like with her own voice, and the voice just did not feel like her voice to me when I was reading it. So much of it was very much influenced by a lot of Western books, Western romance books, and I was hoping for a more desi feel to it. The main male character did not feel like a main male character that would be set up in India. It was very hard for me to imagine him because it was giving strong Western vibes, but at the same time he was in India. I don't know, so it was very hard for me to imagine it. Those were the problems that I have with it, and it was a little cringy in some places. The ending was also quite rushed. These were the problems that I had. However, I just loved the POV of the guy. Even if I couldn't visualize him a lot, the way he was just obsessed with the main female character, it was so good to read. The book was also funny in a few places, and it was in all a good time, a good first book. That is what I think about the book, and I have given the book 2.5 stars. Because I read a romance by an Indian author, I was actually very intrigued to read more romances by Indian author, and one that I have been meaning to read since a very long time was Fool Me Twice by Nona Opal. I follow Nona Opal on Instagram since, I don't know, a year probably. I saw one of her book recommendations long ago and I read it, and I was absolutely obsessed with that book, and since then I have been following all of her recommendations. I was so pleasantly surprised and also very pleasantly reassured about all of the notions that I had in my mind. The book was so good. It starts out with our characters being in 10th standard. Our main female character is not very good with uncertainty and whatnot, and she is thrown into an uncertain environment in her school where she forms these friendships and they become her lifeboat, and we see what exactly happens with those friendships, how it has evolved over time till they are in college. This is a romance novel, so there is a lot of romance in there too, but it felt like subplot to me because there was just so much more going on, and that is exactly what I loved about it. Number one, desi setting. There is so much desiness in this book that I was directly able to connect with, especially when the characters were in 10th standard. That is the kind of experiences that I had when I was in 10th standard. Also, the book is set in Delhi during that time, and I was in Delhi when I was in 10th standard, so it just felt so insanely relatable to me. The talk about Jab We Met, her dressing sense, all of those things just felt very relatable to me, and I loved the setting so much. Secondly, the YA part of it. So it's not a young adult book, however, because the characters are in 10th standard and in college, we can see the coming of age of these characters too, and it was the most innocent, adorable, vulnerable thing in the world. Number three, the characters felt very real to me, even with the romance side of things. And number four, it does not cling on to only one emotion throughout the book. The whole book keeps shifting its tone, so you are never bored because you're feeling so many emotions in different phases of all of these characters' lives. Number five, I think I am absolutely obsessed with the writing. There is a period in there when there is grief, and the way the grief has been expressed tears rolling, and I highly recommend that you read this book by Nona Opel. I gave this book 4 stars. Next up, I read a short novella called The Pigeon by Patrick Suskind. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It is translated from German. I follow Kriti on Instagram. She is a dear friend and she recommends a lot of amazing books. I saw this recommendation and she talked about how this book is actually good for people who don't talk a lot, who observe the world, and I can see why. However, I talk a lot. That is not the reason I picked up this book. She also said that this is the story of a man whose life is upended by a pigeon, and that got me hooked. I was like, I'm going to read it tonight itself. I downloaded it and I read it in one sitting because I hate pigeons from the bottom of my heart, and I don't hate animals. Animal brutality or whatever is like the worst thing in the world. It's something that I cannot stand. Even when I'm reading, there are so many things that I can discount in a book, but if there is animal brutality, I will take out a star rating, and that is my way of showing how much I hate animal brutality. And so I was like, I'm going to read this book. This is just one entire day in the life of this man. I cannot believe how accurately the book has described exactly how I feel about pigeons and what pigeons can do to a life. The book is not only about the pigeon, it's also about how the man observes the world throughout that day and his down spiral, but it begins with the pigeon. And I swear to God, I've had days where my down spiral has begun because of a pigeon. I'm not kidding about it. I have shifted houses because of pigeon. Also, the down spiral that the main character was having was just so relatable. The way he was thinking about things, the overthinking, how he went from one thing to another and he just couldn't stop. All of it was insanely relatable to me. So I highly recommend this book. Yet again, actually, if you don't talk a lot, if you like to observe the world, if you like existential books, philosophical books, then you will really enjoy this book. It's also really short, but if you don't enjoy that, I think this book can be extremely slow and boring for you. So it's meant for a very particular kind of a reader. If you fit in that, go ahead and read it. You will really enjoy it. I gave this book 4 stars. Next up, we have Serpent and the Wings of the Night. It is extremely popular and I only read it because it's available on Kindle Unlimited. I was just in the mood for a fantasy romance and this was available for free. So I started reading it. As I started reading it, it was actually fun, a little cliche for me. The story of this woman who is human in a vampire world and she wants to become stronger, so she has to go through trials, and if she wins the trials, then she will be gifted whatever she wants, and the only way to win the trial is to kill everybody else. Since I've read Hunger Games, I am just seeing this plot as like the baseline for so many books. I read Powerless and that too was about trials and about this main character who does not have powers and things like that, but I had not read Hunger Games at that time, so that was new, absolutely new for me. I had not read any book with trials before then, but then I read Hunger Games and now I'm seeing how many books follow that storyline. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that it was quite cliche in that way. So the first 25% I was like, oh yeah, nice, okay. But I was anyhow looking for a fantasy romance and this clichéness in it. I wanted it to be fast paced. I wanted it to be fun and adrenaline pumping, and it was all of those things. As we moved forward, it got boring, and then we moved forward and it got good, and then we moved forward and it got really good. Because the romance in the book is slow burn, enemies to lovers slow burn, and that is top tier. That is all I want in my life, okay? The two things that I would want together in fantasy is enemies to lovers and slow burn, and in the real world, rivals to lovers and slow burn. Oh my god, I'm obsessed with slow burn so much. Okay, so it got really good and I was obsessed, like turning the pages like crazy. Okay, it was just so much fun, and I was actually able to also visualize the trials in my mind, which is a very rare occurrence for me because a lot of times I don't really know when there's a fight scene going on. I can't see it in my brain. I could visualize everything, and it was just so much fun, and it's about vampires and I'm obsessed with vampires, and wow, so good. And then it got so bad for one chapter there because something happened after which something happens, and you just don't expect that to happen after that happened. What? Are you seriously kidding me? So I was just like so insanely disappointed, and then the ending was there and the ending was so insanely rushed. it was so rushed. Like every chapter was a slap on your face with some sort of a plot twist, which it's good, okay, I enjoyed it again, but I enjoyed it like I enjoyed the first part of the book, not how I was enjoying so much of the book in the middle there, and I was just like and then it became very hard for me to visualize everything again. So that was my journey with this book. In all, an amazing experience. The only thing is that I don't know how excited I am to read the second book. There is a smut scene in this book in the beginning, like whatever, where I have actually never read something better in a fantasy book in my entire life. Oh my god, I was so good. Very, very conflicted feelings with this book. This is why I have given this book 3.75 stars. Very specific with it. And that is it for today. That is all of the books that I have for you. Hopefully, if I have missed out on any book, I will talk about it in the next reading wrap up that I do for you guys. And I really hope you enjoyed the content. Let me know if you have any book recommendations for me, if you're going to read any of these books, which of them intrigued you the most. And now that I have talked about all of these books, it feels like some sort of a clog has been cleared and I can now start reading for the month of February. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys again very, very soon in the next one, hopefully. Bye.